So I'm going to go back to Bard and ask a couple questions. So my query here is, are Florida public officials required by law to hold public meetings when considering alternatives during a PD&E study? And Bard says yes. Florida public officials are required by law to hold public meetings when considering alternatives during a preliminary development environment study. This is known as the Government in the Sunshine Law or Sunshine Law, and it is codified in Florida Statute 286.011. The Sunshine Law requires that all meetings of public boards or commissions be open to the public with limited exceptions. This includes meetings where officials are discussing or deliberating on alternatives for a PD&E study. The Sunshine Law also requires that public officials give reasonable notice of public meetings. This notice must be published in the newspaper of general circulation in the area where the meeting will be held, and it must be posted on the agency's website. The notice must include the date, time, and location of the meeting, as well as the general subject matter to be discussed. Public officials who violate the Sunshine Law can be held liable for civil penalties. Individuals who attend a closed meeting in violation of the Sunshine Law can also be charged with a misdemeanor. So it's clear to me that there have been meetings held behind the scenes, and that there is coordination between Gwen and the board, and that they have conspired to ensure that the SPUI is the selected project. I'm pointing out to the board that FDOT is committing fraud with a misrepresentation of the PFI and SPUI alternatives, and the board expresses no concern, no interest over that charge at all. Now, why would that be the case? Why would they do that? So I'm the inventor of the PFI. PFI is an alternative in the feasibility study. I'm saying they have done it incorrectly and that they are misrepresenting the SPUI, and the board is not interested at all. So obviously the board has an ulterior agenda, and that the FDOT decision to select the SPUI agrees with that agenda. Now, is it Gwen telling the board it's going to be the SPUI or else, and the board saying, okay, we won't make any waves, so they're sitting there and just agreeing to whatever FDOT says? Or is it the board telling FDOT this is what we want, and Gwen going, oh, okay, well then we'll just go along with whatever you want, we'll commit fraud, for your sake? Or are they both on the same page? They both have, they could have separate motives for choosing the SPUI, which I believe is the case. But those motives, they point in the same direction. The Sunshine Law is an important part of Florida's open government laws. It ensures that the public has a right to participate in the decision-making process for projects, and it helps to prevent government officials from making decisions in secret. Well, I think that all these individuals are going around the Florida Sunshine Law. And at the end of the day, a law is only as good as the enforcement of that law. So if they know that they have nothing to fear, that they're not going to get into any trouble with the enforcement agencies of the state of Florida, then they're just going to do it, of course. So I asked Bard, at a recent MPO board meeting, one of the board members revealed that she had a private meeting with a PD&E consultant where she was presented information on the alternatives that has never been presented to the public. The information she received was incorrect and colored her opinion by her admission. Is there anything improper about this event? And Bard's response is yes, there is something improper about this event. The board member violated the Sunshine Law by having a private meeting with the PD&E consultant to discuss alternatives that had not been presented to the public. The Sunshine Law requires that all meetings of public boards or commissions be open to the public with limited exceptions. This meeting did not fall under any of the exceptions, so it was illegal for the board member to have it in private. The fact that the information the board member received was incorrect does not make the event any less improper. The board member still had access to information that the public did not, and she used that information to form her opinion on the alternatives. This is a clear conflict of interest, and it undermines the public's trust in the MPO board. The board member should have recused herself from the decision-making process for this project. Well, she should have recused herself anyway because she's got a clear conflict of interest being married to the CEO of Starkey Ranch and the Starkey Blueberry Farm that are both right off of State Route 54. You know, she obviously has a personal financial interest in turning this road into a freeway. So this is a clip from the MPO board meeting in February 2023 when FDOT gives their presentation. I have given a 3-minute address at the beginning of this meeting, and then this is during the FDOT presentation where I interrupt their presentation, calling out fraud, and then am removed from their meeting.
When we look at alternative number 2, it gets a little more.
So that's Craig Fox speaking, and he's the FDOT District 7 PD&E project manager. And this slide is the first one that comes up. Well, there have been some slides up to this point, but this is at this point they show the PFI and they show this U-turn that people have to make coming from the west to go to Pasco Plaza, and this is where I say that's fraud.
It gets a little more complex because you have those displaced left intersections. It does result in some U-turns, say for instance for the eastbound direction. Okay.
That's me in the background saying that's false.
So we're gonna get to the presentation. All right. Okay, so continue on with the parallel.
This deputy was here specifically for me. So Gwen knew that I was going to do this, or he anticipated that I would be upset. At no time do they talk about why I was upset at all. Gwen just later says that he knew I was going to be upset, but doesn't say why I was upset. Well, it's obvious why I'm upset. They've committed fraud. They're presenting false information, and they're okay with that. They're all just sitting here. This is Bogan sitting here looking at me like, again, I mean, it's like a cow chewing cud, just sitting there, expressionless. Don't, you know. This is kind of an FU attitude that I'm seeing here. I mean, these guys are just pretending like this isn't even happening. Everybody here is pretending that this isn't even happening. And he's just looking on, like whatever. And this deputy is removing me from the room.
So continuing on with the parallel flow intersection, like I mentioned, the displaced left intersections do have the same kind of concerns no matter.
So he's saying, this is right here, Fox is saying, oh, the PFI is a displaced turn intersection. It is not a displaced turn intersection, that freaking asswipe. The PFI does not displace the left turn. Look at her. Oh, what? Huh?
Which type of one you're looking at. So even when we look at continuous flow intersection, it still has the same kind of concerns with requiring some certain U-turns where there weren't any in the as-built condition. Say, for instance, when you look at that southbound direction, instead of making it southbound and making a left turn on Carson Drive, now you have to kind of go southbound and eastbound and then do a U-turn at the Lowe's driveway.
Okay, that's a first. That's horrible.
Yeah, that's Commissioner Starkey telling me, she's saying, that's horrible. Okay. I'm horrible. They're committing fraud. They're ripping off the taxpayers. They're screwing over the public. Billions of dollars is what they are going to be doing by building the SPUI. And they're committing fraud to do it. But I'm the one who's horrible.
Shame on you.
Yeah, shame on me. Shame on me.
We have two bailiffs today.
Why do we
No,
have
I don't mind.
laughing at me? That fuck is laughing at me. This piece of shit who's been investigated by the FBI is on the Pasco Economic Development Council board, which to me is a clear conflict of interest. You know, these people on this Pasco board are just stuffing their pockets with money, likely, from developers, real estate speculators, investors, Newport Richie, Port Richie. You've got Catherine Starkey, whose husband is the CEO of Starkey Ranch and the Starkey Blueberry Farm. They're right off 54. Clearly will financially benefit if there's an interchange built there. I'm the one that's horrible. I'm the one who should be ashamed as they butcher the PFI, the intersection I invented, and I've been working for years trying to get it built somewhere. And they take a big steaming dump on my work, present it to the public. This stupid thing they've concocted, while at the same time completely omitting, pretending like it doesn't exist, all the congestion that's going to be at the SPUI signal on 41. But I'm the one that should be ashamed. I'm the one who's horrible. This motherfucker, okay, and all of them. We'll see. We'll see. One of these days, that fucking shit-eating grin is going to be wiped off this guy's face. These people,
alternative number 2.
These people have cost me and my family $57 million. They've robbed me and my family of $57 million. And they've taken this giant steaming shit on my life's work. But I'm supposed to be ashamed. I'm supposed to be. I'm horrible. So this is me giving my 3-minute address at the beginning of their February board meeting. You know, everybody just sits here. You got this guy over here. Look at him. Just, you know, there's no expression, no nothing. They'll just sit here I mean, they know I have no power over them. They know that they can do whatever the hell they want to do. They know they have sovereign immunity. They know that there's deputies here. Okay, so they've got their muscle in the room, right? I mean, these guys, these deputy sheriffs, they might as well be mafia henchmen. That's what they are. They're just henchmen for the mafia, for the mob, and these guys are, I mean, they might as well be, this guy might as well be Fat Bogan and Fat Fox and Fat Gwen and Fat Hall, I mean, they're all might as well be mobsters. And they have their muscle, their deputy sheriffs in the room with them to take care of me when they know I'm going to get uppity. But this is my 3-minute address where I just repeat what I said in January, which was ignored.
My name is Greg Parsons. I live in Jacksonville. In 2004, I invented the parallel flow intersection, or PFI, one of 3 built alternatives now in the FDOT 4154 PD&E study, 2 with bridges and the PFI with no bridge. I hold a U.S. patent on the PFI and have a financial interest in the project. After my presentation last month, I emailed copies to each of you and Secretary Gwen. I received no follow-up questions and no comments. I understand FDOT will be giving their presentation today. As I explained last month, they are misrepresenting both SPUI and PFI alternatives. They're grossly underreporting the full extent of congestion at the SPUI signal on 41 and 54 ramps. Their evaluation matrix indicates by 2045 delay at the SPUI will be around 3 minutes, AM and PM. This is very wrong. FDOT's traffic analysis results show 10 of 12 movements at the SPUI signal in the AM will be congested, i.e. oversaturated, and all 12 movements in the PM. For oversaturated conditions, FDOT should report max vehicle delays and max queues by approach. My SPUI analysis indicates for the AM peak 41 southbound having over 20-minute delays and almost 3-mile queues, and PM both directions over 20 minutes and 2 miles. For the AM peak, the 54 ramps both directions 10-minute delays and half-mile queues. Even opening year.
So I say 3-mile queues, 20 minutes of delay. No one says anything. They don't dispute that. They don't say, oh, no, that's not right. They don't say, gosh, that's a lot. Maybe we don't want, 41 to be congested. Maybe we should take a look at that. No, nothing. No response, nothing.
It looks like the SPUI signal will queue back through the Dale Mabry intersection during the PM peak period. If you don't believe me, ask them to redo their VSIM results following the FDOT Traffic Analysis Handbook, correcting for unmet demand. Their results should agree with mine. This is the right way to do it and what should have been done in the first place. Regarding their PFI, they designed it to fail. They refused to follow my signal specs and refused to add auxiliary through lanes as needed. The reasons were spurious and guaranteed the PFI would have failing movements, which in turn causes the PFI to have excessive impacts on local access. I urge you to compare their presentation to mine from last meeting. I realize it gets technical, but I'll answer any questions you have under oath if you want. FDOT is presenting the SPUI as their preferred alternative, yet a proper PFI is objectively far superior in every way. But to understand why and how requires the SPUI signal to be analyzed and reported correctly, and the PFI designed and reported correctly. And if so, the SPUI fails spectacularly. And the PFI should be congestion-free through 2045 with better overall local access than the SPUI. FDOT is also proposing to add a new alternative taking 41 over 54. Doing so will have even more impacts and greater costs. And putting the signal on 54 will be even more congested.
Well, I don't know why that cut off there. That was pretty much the end of that 3 minutes. in their presentation, FDOT does propose, well, they should take a look at taking 41 over 54. I see that as just another ploy because they know and they've known that I believe that their agenda is to turn 54 into a freeway. So they can distract by saying, well, we also looked at taking 41 over 54. Well, I think I have that in their presentation. So this is their presentation, I believe. District 7 presentation to the MPO board. And it's during this presentation that I get removed from the room.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me here today.
So this is Craig Fox, the project manager for the PD&E study. Behind him is Secretary Gwen. This is Justin Hall. He's the district, I think the transportation development director, something like that. Hadn't had much interaction with him, although he's been aware of everything that's been going on because he gets copied emails. And then this is Kirk Bogan. He's the guy that I presented my PFI concept proposal back in February of 2016. I've had most of my interaction with him and Fox by emails, and this guy is worthless. I mean, at least if you're a member of the public or if you're a taxpayer, this guy is awful, absolutely awful. Now, if you're Gwen, who is corrupt bureaucrat, or if you're the MPO board, then this guy is really good. He's really good. He's really good at bureaucratic bullshit. He's really good at say being unresponsive. He's really good at deflection. Okay, he's really good at protecting their wrongdoing. I mean, he's a in that regard, I would say he's an effective minion of theirs. But if you're the public or you're a taxpayer, and certainly if you're me, this guy is the worst. He's absolutely awful. And then, of course, the deputy sheriffs are back here, and they have an extra one there in the room just for me.
Again, my name is Craig Fox with the Florida Department of Transportation, here to present a 41 and 54. Oh, it's clicking. Okay. Nice. All right, great. All right, so I'll just dive right into the presentation. So first, just to recap, a quick recap. We came up with 3 alternatives, and the 4th one is always a no bill that we always keep as an alternative. Those 3 alternatives were based on the results of the Vision 5456 summary report back in July of 2018. That includes.
So that's a lie. This order of alternatives is the lie. So, yeah, again, the task force voted on the alternatives, but the PFI was their preferred alternative. They should state that. They should be saying that the PFI was their preferred alternative and make that known. The SPUI is the DOT's preferred alternative, but that's not what the task force, that's not what they voted.
Including the single point urban interchange, the parallel flow intersection, and also continuous flow intersection with no overpass, and also the no build as always. And I have different examples of what those alternatives are in the next slide. So alternative number 1, this is an example of a single point urban interchange. This is from US 19 and State Road 686, Roosevelt Boulevard in Pinellas County. You can see it's more of a standard type of intersection with, in this case, US 19 going over 686, and then the turning movements are made at grade underneath the intersection. The next slide is going to show a visualization of this type of spooey intersection at the intersection in question. So this is 41 and 54 visualization.
So he says visualization. It's not really a visualization. I mean, it's an illustration of their spooey. When I think visualization, I think of a VSIM simulation that would show traffic at this junction with this proposed spooey. And they have not shown any VSIM to the public, which would show all of the congestion on 41 and on the ramps. That has been deliberately omitted throughout. They've had it available. They had their public meeting in 2021. They did not show any what I call visualization of the alternatives. Of course, they won't show that because it shows 41 for the spooey as a parking lot. That's called lying by omission.
I just want to point out that north is to the right of the screen in this visualization, so it does have 54 going over US 41. The next example I'd like to show is the parallel flow intersection. Now this one we just have a visualization for. We don't have an actual an example we can pull an image from because as yet there hasn't one been built in the United States. But this one does show how the intersection would look at 41 and 54. And the third alternative that we're looking at is the continuous flow interchange. We do have one in existence right now is a State Road 82 and a Daniels Parkway. This is in Lee County. And kind of see how that functions. And now I do want to note that this does not include an overpass in this example. In our visualization, we do have an overpass.
Well, and the one in Lee County is a partial CFI. You can see that it's only showing 2 of the legs on 82 being treated with the bypass ramps of the CFI. There is not in the United States, to my knowledge, a full 2-phase CFI that's been built. They're all partial in one way or another. There are 2-phase, I think there's 2-phase CFIs in Utah, but if I remember right, they are still partial in the sense that they don't have what I remember they don't have the right turns on the bypass ramp, but I could be misremembering. But to my knowledge, there is not a full 2-phase CFI like what would be built at this intersection.
At that intersection. So this is a visualization of a continuous flow interchange at 41 and 54. So you can see 54 goes over 41, and then it has the left turn movements are made at grade. And now the CFI and the PFI are kind of similar, but both displace what we call.
That's a lie. He knows. Well, I've told him it's not a displaced turn intersection. The PFI does not displace the left turn. Calling it a displaced turn intersection is false. It's false. That's like calling a roundabout a rotary. I mean, they're both round intersections, so a roundabout is just a different kind of rotary. Except anybody who knows anything about roundabouts knows that a roundabout and a rotary are very different. Yes, they're both round, They're both circular intersections, but they're really completely different. Only in a superficial sense are they similar, and the same is true for the PFI and CFI. So it's wrong to call the PFI a displaced turn intersection. Now, they have an agenda. Their agenda is to discredit the PFI. Their agenda is to cast dispersions. Calling it a displaced turn intersection is just another way of doing it.
Displaced left intersections, they kind of offset where the lefts are actually made. So they're not made directly at an intersection, they're made a little bit before.
And of course that's wrong, because the whole point of the CFI is to displace the left turn hundreds of feet away from the crossroad to direct traffic onto the bypass ramp of the CFI that is parallel to the approach road. The PFI places the bypass road parallel to the crossroad so that it doesn't displace the left turn. That's what is the main advantage of the PFI over the CFI, is that it does not displace the left turn.
All right. So this is the same alternative matrix that we had at the Alternative Public Workshop back in 2019. We covered different items such as the traffic effectiveness, the pedestrian accommodations, property access. And
that's BS. You know, they say, oh, they included things like pedestrian accommodations. All it says in the matrix, in their evaluation matrix, is I think it has number of crossings. That's it. That's literally the only information that they're providing to the public with respect to pedestrian crossing in their public meeting information and in their alternative matrix. That's it.
And also for potential right-of-way impacts. You can see on there, just based on the raw traffic numbers, one item, one reference point that's pretty much easy to differentiate between the three is what we call the network travel time. And this is based on the simulation running multiple.
Network travel time is nonsense, BS number. Network travel time. That should not be included. They should be showing level service. They should also always accompany, this is always done when I was doing consulting for preliminary development, public meetings, we would have an exhibit that explains level of service to the public. I mean, that's kind of a standard thing that you do, because this is a thing that is very frustrating with all the FDOT public meetings that I've seen here in Florida, is that they don't educate the public. And the public comes in, looks at their exhibits and goes, oh, okay, and then go home. But what they don't do is, they need to have something there on hand for people to understand the implication of some of the information that they're seeing. And one of those things is level of service. What does that actually mean? Now, FDOT doesn't want to educate the public on level of service because FDOT lies to the public about level of service. They want to be able to build level service F interchanges and intersections and not have the public get upset with them. So what you do is disguise the just the poor performance that the people are going to end up experiencing when they build their project. So it's better to just let people stay in the dark. Don't tell them anything about level of service. Don't tell them what that really means, how much time they're going to be stuck at the signal, because that makes life easier for the bureaucrats. And that's important. Let's make life easy for the bureaucrats. And if that means that the peasants have to be stuck at a signal for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that's okay. That's okay, because we don't want the bureaucrats to have to, work. We want that.
Different runs, millions of runs in the simulation, and it spits out a single number that we can kind of use. And it's the reason why we have to kind of use that factor is because with the displaced left intersections, they have like kind of 5 intersections in one, so you can't do a direct one-to-one comparison versus like this buoy alternative.
That's false. That's bullshit. You can't do a one-to-one comparison. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And VSIM allows you to do that. With VSIM, all you have to do is set up the routes and tell VSIM you want to measure the delay by route through the junctions of the PFI and CFI. So yes, the SPUI has one junction, one signal. The PFI has 5, the CFI has 5. Okay, but VSIM can capture all the traffic that's going through all 5 junctions, and from that it can provide an average delay for the whole, taking all 5 junctions and treating them basically as a single junction. Very doable, very straightforward. Anybody who knows how to run VSIM knows how to do that. Their consultant knows how to do that. By showing them as individual junctions, that's very misleading to the public, because what it does is it makes people think that those delays are added together, and they're not. They're not, because there's overlapping delay. It's overlapping. It's not. They're not additive. What it gives to the lay person who's looking at their table is the sense that, oh, I have to stop at this junction of the PFI, and then I have to stop at the first bypass junction, and then I'm going to have to stop at the main junction, and then I'm going to have to stop at the bypass junction on the crossroad. I'm going to have to stop 3 times to get through the PFI, and I'm going to be delayed by the amount that they're showing. So I have to add all those 3 up. That's wrong. That's false. That the number of stops at the PFI on average is less than 2. It's like 1.8 stops. That's because the signals are coordinated. They're arranged such that people don't have to stop at every single signal when they go through the PFI, and the CFI is the same way. Okay, but they don't care. See, they've had 7 years to educate themselves into understanding these things about the PFI, the CFI. They've spent 0 effort to do that. All they care about is the SPUI, and the PFI and CFI is dog shit to them, and not worth spending even, 5 minutes to understand. They have no interest in having an honest understanding of the PFI or the CFI, for that matter. So all they care about is the SPUI, because that's all that they've ever done, and that's all they need to know. That's all they need to know, because they're going to make sure that the PFI and CFI just aren't going to see the light of day, certainly not at this location.
One or the no build as it is today. So we kind of use that figure. So when you're looking at the raw traffic numbers, the best performing one is alternative 3, and then followed by alternative 2, and then alternative 1 as far as traffic is concerned. The alternative matrix, we also did look at the natural, cultural, and physical environment impacts, and also estimates of the present day cost. So when you look at the overall cost, this includes the design, right-of-way construction, wetland mitigation, and construction engineering inspection phases. If you look at the total cost at the bottom of the screen on the far right,
of course, they've omitted life cycle cost. Admittedly, life cycle cost is not a major cost factor, but it's millions of dollars over the life of the SPUI and the PFI and CFI, and they're relative to each other is a big difference. because the SPUI, you're talking about all that retaining wall and the bridges, 2 sets of bridges that have to be inspected regularly, they have to be maintained, whereas the PFI, without any bridges, without any retaining walls, only requires a resurfacing like every 10 years.
It's 241 for alternative number 3, 108 for alternative number 2, and 222, and these are millions of dollars, by the way, for alternative number 1, and of course the bill is $0 because that's just routine maintenance that we wouldn't include in that cost.
So he's just said that the SPUI is going to be $222 million. The PFI is $108 million. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that, and he doesn't talk about my fee at all because, of course, they're not picking the PFI. But if my fee were not included, that's a cost savings of $114 million between the SPUI and the PFI. You would think that would matter to somebody who is supposed to care. The politicians who spend tax money and the FDOT bureaucrats who spend tax money, you would think that $114 million savings, that's the PFI costs less than half of what the SPUI costs. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn. Because why do they care? Why would they care? It's not their money, right? That's one of the things that you just have to love about politicians and bureaucrats is that they're always so happy to spend other people's money. And to be fair, it is a lot of fun to spend other people's money. So I'll give them that.
Now the reason, just want to break out the reason why alternatives number 1 and number 3 are so high is because they have those overpass structures. That's also why alternative 1 and number 3 also has a little more right-of-way impacts, is because again you have that overpass structure which extends the length of the right-of-way impacts and the overall cost of the project. So in addition to just the raw numbers that we look at in the alternative matrix, we also wanted to just zoom out and look at the right context that we're putting, that we're looking at the intersection.
Okay, so he's going to talk about issues that have not been revealed up until this time. The title of this slide is alternative selection. These 5 factors that they've got listed here have never been shown to the public. They were not included in their public meeting of 2021. No information about this has ever been disclosed up until this time. Now, I had this in advance, but again, by accident, I got an advanced copy of this presentation, so I knew what they were going to be presenting. And I complained about this to Gwen by email and got no response. But this is all bullshit to do this. This is called ambush. This is ambush tactics to drop these these selection criteria the day that you announce the design that you've selected. And this is after 4 years of feasibility study by FDOT that they come up with this BS. So I had no opportunity to respond to any of this for the PFI. And of course I didn't, because they're trying to exclude me. Well, they're not trying to exclude me. They have excluded me from the study and evaluation of the PFI completely. So they're not getting my input into any of this. Now, of course, I object to these things because, well, certainly the first 2, pedestrian expectancy, driver expectancy, those are subjective. what is that? What does it mean what is pedestrian expectancy? What does a pedestrian expect? Why did the chicken cross the road? I mean, what does that even mean? I think a pedestrian expects there to be a crosswalk and a pedestrian signal telling them when they can go. That's what a pedestrian expects. I don't know what else. What else should the pedestrian expect other than that? Well, the PFI offers that, because there are pedestrian crossings that would be marked and pedestrian signals that are going to tell the pedestrian when they can go or not go. But this has been contrived to discredit the PFI. And we'll see that what they are presenting under this pedestrian expectancy criterion is itself BS and fraudulent. And then you get to driver expectancy. What does the driver expect? Well, a driver expects there to be pavement markings, traffic signals, signage, if necessary. That's what a driver expects. That's what I expect. Well, the PFI has that. No different than the CFI, no different than the SPUI. So if and they're going to talk about confusion, driver confusion, well, what does that even mean? Of course there's driver confusion. Driver's going to be confused no matter what you do. I guarantee that when they build the SPUI there's going to be confused drivers. Not necessarily because the SPUI itself is confusing, but it's different. They've made a change to the intersection. People who drive that intersection every day all of a sudden are confronted with something that's different. There's going to be an initial reaction of confusion and unfamiliarity, and then they figure it out, and then they're not confused anymore. Same thing would be true for the PFI. Now, in terms of driver expectancy or driver confusion, if that's a concern, there are tools available for them to assess that, which they did not employ at all. They did not. There's no engineering. Both of these, pedestrian expectancy, driver expectancy, there is zero engineering. It's not like they created like a simulation, like a first person simulation of these projects for drivers or pedestrians to experience, and then measure their mistakes. Like for instance, they could use the VSIM point of view feature and have a person virtually walk the project, each one, and have question and answer. Do you find this confusing? They could get a random sample of people to virtually walk the SPUI project, the PFI and CFI projects, and just count count mistakes and have a question and answer. Did you find crossing at this location confusing? Were you uncomfortable? Did you feel unsafe? They could have done that. I mean, they should have done that if that is a concern. They don't do it themselves. The bureaucrat doesn't have to do that themselves. That's why they have consultants. The consultants do all the work. Consultants do the legwork. The consultants would build the virtual model. Consultants would put together the group of people, like a focus group, randomly selected. The consultant would run the this test, or it would be a study in and of itself, and then they would produce the results. That's how it's done. If it's an issue, if it's a concern, and you're you're tasked with evaluating feasibility, that's how you do it. Not a big deal, really. Not a big deal. Takes some work, costs some money, but we're talking, tens of millions of dollars in potential cost savings with the PFI and billions of dollars in terms of time savings and fuel savings for the public. It's worth spending, let's say they spend $1 million to evaluate pedestrian expectancy and confusion. Then do it. Okay? Do it. If it's needed, do it. But that wasn't done. They had no intention of doing anything like that because they'd already picked the SPUI, and to hell with the PFI, to hell with the CFI for that matter, and then by extension to hell with the public and to hell with the taxpayers. That's the DOT way. That's how it should be in their vision or in their mission statement. Their mission statement should be, do what's easiest for us, do what benefits us most, screw the public, screw the taxpayers. That's the FDOT mission. And the driver expectancy is the same thing, and that's what they did for the DDI in Missouri when that's the first one built in the U.S. Is it confusing for drivers? Does it violate driver expectancy? Damn right it does. The DDI violates driver expectancy because it has drivers cross to the opposite side of the road and then cross back. Now, if that were these people, the FDOT District 7 people, they would have this little thing here that says driver expectancy, and they would say no to the DDI because, well, gosh, people are going to be confused, so we don't want people to get confused, so let's not build a DDI. The only reason that there's DDIs being built in the state of Florida now is because they got built somewhere else first. Somebody else had to do the work to evaluate the feasibility of the DDI so that these people, these lazy ass people, don't have to do that themselves. Okay? So who pays the price? Well, the public does, and the taxpayers do, and they don't care. Then they have business access, residential access. Well, those two factors are garbage because they didn't design the PFI correctly and created access problems for the PFI fraudulently. So all five of these factors that they are featuring here in this presentation have all been contrived to cast the PFI in a negative light. And nowhere do they show congestion. The whole goddamn purpose of this project is to meet future traffic demand. That's the project purpose and needs statement. That's why they're going to spend $222 million goddamn dollars to meet future traffic demand. Only they're not. They're going to have a future parking lot on US 41. And these have all been selected deliberately to discredit the PFI and allow them to justify the SPUI.
Also, so in addition to looking at those numbers on the alternative matrix, we also looked at different items, including pedestrian expectancy. And what we mean by that is how would a pedestrian interact with this intersection, whether they're in a wheelchair, whether they're walking, whether they have vision impairment. Want to just kind of analyze how that would be. Well,
which didn't include any actual pedestrians. This is all their subjective opinion, which is, by the way, highly prejudicial.
let's look at driver expectancy. How familiar would drivers be with the intersection like that?
How familiar are drivers going to be with the intersection? Drivers get familiar. Again, if they use that criteria to decide whether or not to build a roundabout, we would never have any roundabouts. Because obviously the roundabout is confusing the first time you encounter one. People are confused by roundabouts. In the U.S., when they first started appearing, there was a lot of confusion at a roundabout. Just don't build them. Just stop right there. Yeah, they're really safe. They're excellent designs, but people are initially confused. So don't build them. Don't do it. We can't do that. Let's go back to our always stop or, signals that don't work. Okay, forget the roundabout because, some people are going to be confused by them.
Yes. And we also looked at business access because those displaced left interchanges, they greatly impact how you would access businesses in all four corners.
This is the access issue is just unbelievable to me. One of the reasons why the local business owners have been so opposed to the SPUI is because they know it's going to greatly impact access to their business. They know it's going to do it. So, but what they've done is design the PFI to have greater access than the SPUI. When they refused to follow my specifications for the PFI, they deliberately made it fail such that it was going to have excessive impacts on access, more than the SPUI does.
Of the intersection, we also looked at residential access and railroad conflicts because with CSX owning that rail line, they'll be an important partner we have to partner with, and we'll have to have a design that's approved, that's acceptable to them also. So based on those different characteristics, the alternative that
the railroad conflict is nonsensical too. It's just more lying, and the thing is, and the railroad conflicts are the same between the PFI and the SPUI. They have the same number of vehicle movements that cross the track. The benefit that SPUI provides for the railroad track is to reduce the volume of traffic that actually crosses the track. The bridge reduces the volume of traffic that crosses the track by 50%. That's a noteworthy benefit, and they don't talk about that at all. I mean, instead they contrive a graphic that says, well, there's one less railroad conflict point at the SPUI, which is false.
department, So now we're going to look at.
So this is a cartoon that they're showing here. This is not the actual SPUI design. So they're not using the actual proposed SPUI design for their pedestrian crossing graphic. They have created a cartoon here that makes it look not so bad. In fact, the graphic here looks more like the crossing at the PFI, not the SPUI.
To some of those items that I mentioned. So first one is the pedestrian expectancy. So as you can see in here with Single Point Urban Interchange intersection, we simulated it from going from the southwest corner to the northeast corner. So if an individual starts there, and the number of points indicate the number of refuge islands that pedestrian would have to face.
What they omit, and what they've always omitted, what they pretend does not exist, is this crossing right there. Let's see if I can do this. This crossing doesn't look that bad, does it? They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 3 lanes here. That's their little cartoon graphic shows 8 lanes. It's 9 lanes is what they're proposing. So this is a 9-lane crossing here, and somehow that's perfectly safe for pedestrians. That somehow the pedestrian has no problem with crossing 9 lanes. That meets pedestrian expectancy, whatever that is, to have to walk across 9 lanes.
So looking at alternative one, they would have about 5 different refuge islands that they have to pause at in navigating that intersection. With the parallel flow intersection, that does increase to around 7 different medians. And when we started to look at
The islands and medians, what is the problem with that? They talk about it like that's having the islands is a problem. The islands, they're called refuge islands. They're a good thing. Having islands where pedestrians can stand and not be in traffic, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So they're here counting islands and saying, well, the PFI has more islands. Like that's somehow a negative. No, it's a good thing because that gives pedestrians more locations where they don't have to be in traffic. The crossing of 41 has the pedestrian having to contend with 5 different vehicle movements. That's 5 different directions a vehicle could strike the pedestrian in that one crossing. Somehow in their brain, they don't see that as a problem. That's not a safety problem. Whereas the PFI is going to have a median, for instance, and because of the way it's arranging the movements at the intersection, the pedestrian only has to contend with traffic coming from one direction at every crossing. And there's an island for them to have refuge, and not a small island either. So when they cross 41, for instance, the maximum number of lanes pedestrian crosses is 4 lanes. And then the island in the median, because there will be an island in the median at the PFI, that island is 24 feet wide because it's two lanes wide. I think 2 lanes. It's either 2 or 3 lanes. I think it's 2 lanes. That's 24 feet. 24 feet is a pretty good amount of size for an island for pedestrians to wait for the next phase if they have to. And the phases at the PFI are short, 30 seconds. So if they miss it and they have to stop, they only have to wait another 30 seconds before they go again. Whereas at the SPUI, to cross 41, they may have to wait a few minutes before they can get across because of all the different conflicting vehicle movements. So all of that is lost in their presentation on purpose, deliberately.
pedestrian expectancy, we started to notice that it had some of the kind of same concerns for the parallel flow intersection, were also reflective on the continuous flow intersection that's shown on this slide now. You still have those 7 different refuge islands you have to stop at, but one thing to note is that when a pedestrian crosses, the direction of traffic changes based on where they are and what refuge island they're at, which is a
You
lot
have to
different.
remember to look left in one place and right at the other place. Like
Yes,
if
ma'am.
you're in a foreign country in America.
So this is Starkey, Commissioner Starkey, of Starkey Ranch and Starkey Blueberry Farm, the lady who's going to cash in when she finally manages to finagle an interchange on 54 at Starkey Ranch. She's trying to say that because the PFI has people have to look left and right before they cross. So at the PFI, when you, like at crossing 41, the first crossing, the pedestrian look is the traffic's coming from the left. If they're crossing from west to east, traffic comes from the left. Then the signal changes and they're able to proceed. When they get to the other direction of 41, then they look to the right. She's trying to say that that is dangerous and confusing for pedestrians. Okay, that's the dumbest damn thing ever. Stupid. Though I know it's a deliberate lie. That's something that people seem to get wrong about politicians. Everybody wants to think of a politician as a clown. You know, they're just incompetent clowns. They're just dumb people. No, they're not. They're clever, conniving people. It's just that they say stupid stuff in order to advance their agenda. She's being deliberately stupid here. Let's put it that way. You know, the idea that the pedestrian gets to cross 41, the pedestrian looks left, but the pedestrian, you know, they're waiting for the signal. The signal's going to tell the pedestrian when to cross. There's a signal there that says walk. And then the pedestrian crosses. Now, yeah, they should look left to make sure nobody's coming, you know, through the signal, you know, that somebody's not stopping as they should. I don't see how that's unsafe. In fact, that's what you have at a roundabout. The roundabout is safer for pedestrians because at every crossing, traffic's coming, at every pedestrian crossing, traffic's coming from one direction, which makes it a lot safer for the pedestrian. The fact that at the PFI, traffic comes from only one direction at every crossing, yes, traffic comes from a different direction at each crossing, but it's only coming from one direction. That's a safety feature of the PFI. That's a safety advantage of the PFI, and they're trying to characterize it as a safety hazard with this inanity, this absolute stupidity of what they're trying to communicate here. Oh, it's just confusing, blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, they have done zero engineering to substantiate that opinion. You know, they don't have, they could have a virtual model, again, a virtual model, and have people randomly selected, not people who are prejudicial like everyone in this room, prejudicially against the PFI, but have just random pedestrians. They could have had the task force do it, even though there are people on the task force who are prejudicially favor the SPUI over the PFI. But that would still be better than them sitting there and just coming up with this, just pulling this nonsense right out of their ass. And anyway, so the PFI is not safe for pedestrians because traffic's coming from this way and that way, even though that is literally the problem. What makes the crossing at the SPUI so much less safe is that traffic literally is coming from multiple different directions as the pedestrian crosses 41. There's 5 different directions that a pedestrian could be struck by a car.
Americans are always getting smacked because they looked the wrong way.
What a fucking idiot this lady is. Not an idiot. See, that's the thing. She's not an idiot. She's not stupid. She's just corrupt. And she's just talking shit because she wants the SPUI and not the PFI. And because she's sitting here in this protected space with a deputy sheriff there to you know, she's got her muscle there to make sure that anybody who calls out her bullshit is ejected from the room. She's just allowed to sit there and say the most stupid shit with impunity.
Yeah.
See? Fucking assholes. Fucking scumbags these are.
That's a good example, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So we did notice that it has a little bit more challenges, especially when you're
A little more challenges. Really? Really? The SPUI has people, and I've been saying this to them over and over and over for years. The SPUI requires people to cross 9 goddamn lanes in a crossing. One go. 9 lanes. 5 different directions vehicles can strike a pedestrian. That's safer than the PFI where it's 4 lanes maximum, one direction.
looking at a more urban environment such as 41 and 54. Now, usually these types of displaced lefts are more close to rural areas, like the example.
See, and I'm sitting in the audience. My blood is boiling. I'm being quiet. I knew that I was going to raise hell when they got to the PFI access, which is
That I showed out of Lee County,
Coming
you
up.
notice the development around there was really sparse and it wasn't really developed. You also notice that these are typically installed at, say, an interchange with an interstate, where there's limited access, so there's less development on the corners. So
that's stupid. That's nonsense. I don't even know what he's talking about. The CFI is typically built at an interchange. What? Or in a rural location. What? Just go to Utah, where they're building them in town on arterials. Go to Baton Rouge, where they're building them on arterials in town. What is he talking about?
So being that it's a more urban environment, you are going to have a more challenging kind of pedestrian experience with those displaced left type of areas.
Not at the PFI. Not at the PFI. There's a reason why at the CFI it is not as pedestrian friendly as the PFI. And that's due to the way the ramp operates at the CFI. There's no island. Well, I would have to show a graphic of it, but the problem for the CFI, the way they typically are built, is that there's no pedestrian refuge or very small island between the bypass ramp and the mainline lanes. And traffic is coming from different directions. So it's trying to cross at the CFI is maybe kind of hairy for a pedestrian. But the PFI, I find the PFI to be very pedestrian friendly environment and safer than any other. Safer than roundabout for pedestrians, safer than at any kind of intersection. The PFI is the safest. There's no question about it.
Sections. Next, moving on to the driver expectancy, we did still make some runs as far as how you'd access the Pasco Plaza at the northeast corner of the intersection. So when you look at here with alternative number 1 with a single point urban interchange, it's fairly conventional to how you'd normally access it today, not too far off. When we look at alternative number 2, it gets a little more complex because you have those displaced left intersections. It does result in some U-turns, say for instance for the eastbound direction.
So now I'm interrupting Fox's presentation, saying that that's false and that's fraud.
Say, okay, I'm sorry, but please do not interrupt. I didn't interrupt. So we're gonna get to the presentation. All right. Okay, so continue on with the parallel.
There's the deputy who was there just for me. Just for me. Gwen knew I was going to raise hell at some point because of the angry emails he got from me when I knew what they were going to be presenting. And they were prepared. And here's this piece of shit, Bogan, sitting there all smarmy, looking at me. everybody else is sitting here uncomfortably just looking ahead, pretending that nothing's happening. All these motherfucking people allow them to do this. Nobody says a word. I invented the PFI. The board knows damn well who I am. And I'm standing here saying they've committed fraud. And they have their muscle man throw me out. This guy, as far as I'm concerned, the sheriffs, the deputies, they're just henchmen for mobsters. That's what they are. They're just henchmen for mobsters. That's what this guy is. He's just the muscle. And if I tried to resist, then he just beat me up. Right? So this whole thing is legal fraud that they are able to commit out in the open, in your face. Fuck you.
That's fine. So you are committing fraud.
So continuing on with the parallel flow intersection, like I mentioned, the displaced left intersections do have the same kind of concerns no matter which type of one you're looking at.
They're just sitting here. Gwen just sits here. What a piece of shit this guy is. What a piece of shit. Of course, I call him a piece of shit to his face. I'm sure it's not the first time he's been called that.
So maybe when we look at continuous flow intersection, it still has the same kind of concern.
You fucking piece of shit. Gwen, you fucking piece of shit. This is 7 years of them torturing me with their bullshit coming down to this moment. That fucking piece of shit. It's just lucky I wasn't armed.
With requiring some certain U-turns where there weren't any in the as-built condition. Say, for instance, when you look at that southbound direction, instead of making a southbound and making a left turn on a Parsons Drive, now you have to kind of go southbound and eastbound and then do a U-turn at the Lowe's driveway.
Okay, that's a first. That's horrible. Shame on you.
Shame on me. That's just rich as hell. Shame on me. She's there sitting on that whatever the fuck it is, that dais, just looking down on the small people, the little people. We got a great system of democracy in this country. We really do. There is no democracy in the United States. That's a lie. That's just another lie to say the U.S. is democratic. It's not democratic. Voting is not democratic. There's nothing democratic about electing politicians. That's oligarchic. And she is part of the local oligarchy, basically, is what she is. And she's saying, I am horrible. I should be ashamed. As she's committing fraud. As she's in a position to screw over the public, rip off the taxpayers to pocket money for herself, to enrich herself, her family, her friends, her political donors. I'm the horrible one. And she's going to screw over everybody that uses 41 forever. They're going to be stuck at that signal at the SPUI. And they don't give a rat's ass that's what's happening. Because to them, everybody that uses 41, they're the peasants. But I'm the horrible. I'm being horrible. This is my life's work that the FDOT is shitting all over. Taking a huge steaming dump on my work. And I'm the one that's being horrible. I should be ashamed. And this is a follow-up to the 10-minute presentation that I had given the month before, where I call out FDOT fraud right in front of her face. She knows damn well what I'm saying. And that somehow it's okay for them to do that.
I was wondering, why do we have two bailiffs today? Now I know why.
Yeah, this piece of shit here. This guy is corrupt as hell. He's been investigated by the FBI. I'm sure the FBI didn't find anything because the FBI is corrupt too. They're not going to put somebody like him in jail. Are you kidding? I mean, that would be putting one of their own in jail, basically. So no, I'm sure they didn't find anything, but he has been investigated by the FBI. He's an ex officio board member of the Pasco Economic Development Council. As far as I'm concerned, a clear conflict of interest between that role and this role on the MPO board. Because what he's doing is, as in his position on this MPO board, is directing transportation investments and priority, transportation project priority, which obviously for him, it's economic development. Not meeting future traffic demand, but economic development. In other words, generating future traffic, but not actually dealing with the congestion. In other words, he's part of the problem. He's the reason why Pasco County has one of the worst traffic safety records in the state of Florida. Because all they care about is new development. Their existing road system can't handle all that development. And on this project, they're going to commit fraud. They're going to lie to the federal government and say that this project is about eliminating congestion when it's not anything of the sort. It's about generating economic development in Newport Richey and Port Richey, which is, as the county commissioner, these are in his districts, as I understand it. So he's laughing at me, laughing at the PFI, thinks it's hilarious. We'll see, I think maybe I'd like to wipe that fucking smug ass grin off his face.
Okay, we'll continue on with residential.
Yep, continue on. Ha ha ha. Everybody's just kind of, look at him rolling his eyes here. Well, that got rid of that crazy guy. Gwen's just sitting there. Okay, so they just took a big steaming shit on my life's work. They're fucking over the public. They're fucking over the taxpayers. Everybody here is a winner, but everybody outside this room, other than their land developer buddies, which I think were also present, the only non-agency people in that room, there was a reporter from Tampa Bay Times who then wrote a false article saying incorrect things about me and didn't give me an opportunity to comment on her article before it was published. And then you have some guys that look like they were probably either realtors or land developers. So, the unsuspecting public, everybody that's going to be using 41 and going to be stuck there forever, they're oblivious to what is going on here, to the crime that is being committed not just against me, but against them too. And the taxpayers. But who cares about the taxpayers? FDOT literally doesn't give a damn about the taxpayers. Literally. And the reason I say that is if you read the FDOT mission statement, there's no mention of taxpayers, no mention of being financially responsible at all. So, spending money, their agenda is to maximize how much they spend on projects. Not be responsible with tax money, but to spend as much as they possibly can. Which is what they're doing on this project.
Access. When we look at alternative 1, the single point urban interchange, it does result in a difference, and this is because you have the overpass that's crossing the intersection. So that overpass, while we can't.
So here you have, they know that this is a big issue for the public is the impact that the SPUI is going to have on access because of the retaining walls that are required to, raise the road to get over, to get to the match up with the bridge. It's going to cut off access. So what do? Well, they designed the PFI to be stupid so that they can show it having even more impact to access. So now they're showing the SPUI being the best option for access.
And have some turnarounds at certain locations on the overpass. Once it starts coming down and goes beneath a certain elevation, you can no longer provide U-turn. So that would force eastbound traffic to make a U-turn just before the intersection of 41.
See, because today there's a U-turn right in here. This is Hunt Road. This is Devon Oak. There's a neighborhood up here. So people today are able to go down to Hunt Road, which is about here, make a U-turn and go back to Devon Oak. With the SPUI, because of the retaining walls, people have to go all the way down to 41 and go back. Well, people wouldn't like that. The PFI, if it's designed correctly, maintains the U-turn at Hunt Road and a left turn into Hunt Road. So their existing access would be maintained if the PFI is designed correctly and signalized correctly. Well, FDOT ensured that wouldn't be the case. So now they've got it so where people with the PFI is built, they have to go all the way down to Lowe's, way down here, and then come back. That's bullshit. It's a lie. It's fraud.
For alternative number 1. When you look at alternative number 2 for the parallel flow intersection,
Look at that.
does
Look at that bullshit they're showing here. Absolute bullshit. Okay, and all of this shit has cost me $57 million and my family. All of this bullshit has cost us $57 million. Cost the taxpayers $60+ million. And will have cost the public billions of dollars in lost time and excess fuel consumption. And not to mention all of the added environmental impacts, property impacts that the SPUI alternative is going to involve.
Does force users, and I'm sorry, let me make it clear that this access to Devon Oak Boulevard on the north side of 54. So that would force users to go through 41 and then make a U-turn at the Lowe's intersection and then make that right turn. And it's a similar access for the continuous flow intersection also. You'd have to, again, go through the intersection, make a U-turn at the Lowe's, and then make a right on Devon Oak Boulevard.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in other words, if they're headed, and I don't know if I have this orientation right, they would not be able to turn left off the road into.
Yes.
How many residents are we talking about there?
I know that development, it certainly built up a lot more than it was before over the last couple of years. I don't know the exact count of.
Piece of shit. That piece of shit. Piece of dog shit. Gwen, you motherfucking piece of dog shit. Anyway.
Yeah, and I just asked that because if I had to go through that intersection every time I was going back to my house, I mean, I know you're crippled by certain constraints. I understand that, but I don't know. That would be
Right. So why not pick the PFI? Because it should maintain that U-turn. No. Because he wants the bridge for Zephyr Hills to prosper. Got to have economic development in Zephyr Hills, so we got to turn 54 into a freeway. These kinds of sacrifices that the people of Devon Oak, well, they just have to make them.
that would be very bad.
It's sacrifices that he's willing to make. He doesn't live in Devon Oak, so he doesn't really give a shit. Not really. And in fact, I think he talks about property values. He's a realtor. That's how he makes his money.
It could take you 30 minutes sometimes to do that maneuver. I would guess.
Well, we certainly hope not.
Yeah, it seems like a long route.
But anyway,
Well, actually, it will take, probably will take 20 minutes because during peak periods, because traffic's going to be backed up the ramp. People who live in Devon Oak, they have to travel east on 54 down to 41 and use the ramps to make their U-turn. And the ramp is going to be backed up. So they're going to be stuck on the ramp until they can get to the U-turn to go back the other way. And that right now looks like it's about 10 minutes in the peak period, at least 10 minutes. So they're going to be at the back end of that queue, and then they're going to have to drive another few minutes, several minutes, to get back to Devon Oak.
and I know it's for the greater good. Sometimes some people.
It's for the great. You know what the greater good is for these people on this board? The greater good is what's good for them. That's the greater good, right? The greater good is how do I cash in on these transportation projects? That's the greater good.
People are going to be inconvenienced, but they would really be inconvenienced. And I'm a realtor, and that could affect value there.
There you go. That could affect values. Those are values he doesn't care about. Because the land value that he's trying to increase are going to be in Zephyr Hills.
Yeah, and that was some of the same concerns that we noticed when we started looking at it in greater detail also.
Yeah, whatever.
So then looking at I'm going backwards now. Looking at the south side, we similarly have access to the Cambridge Cove complex. So if you're going westbound with a single point urban interchange, you still do have to go further west in order to and then make that U-turn to access Cambridge Cove. Again, this is because you have an overpass and you physically just can't make a left underneath it.
Right.
With the parallel flow intersection, because that one does not involve an overpass, you actually can make that left turn into Cambridge Cove, so it does make that access more direct and more similar to what it is today. And then alternative 3, with a continuous flow intersection, that one does have an overpass, so you run into the same issue. So access is modified both based on whether it has an overpass or not, and also whether it has a displaced lefts or not. So it's kind of
or if it has a displaced left or not. Well, actually, that's true for the CFI because it is a displaced left. The whole goddamn point of the PFI is not to displace the left. Fucking idiot.
it's pros and cons to each concept. And then the railroad conflicts. So this one we have on the count of the amount of just overall movements that will conflict with the rail line. So it's not.
This is a lie. This is just another damn lie of theirs. It's BS. They show these are the conflict points for the SPUI. And they show 5. That's a lie. The reason it's a lie is what they've done, because of this short little piece here, there's a left turn, the left turn from 41 northbound crosses the track, and the through westbound on the westbound ramp that's crosses the track. So they combine those two movements and say that there's only one. That's called lying. They should count every movement that crosses a track. Just because there's about, I don't know, maybe 20 feet of tangent where they actually come together, that doesn't mean the movement goes away. You still have that movement. That has to be, the way to look at it is, where's the gates going to go? Is there going to be gates here, or are the gates going to be here? I guess there'll be gates here, and they'll use the traffic signal here to stop people from making a left when the gates come down. So that you can't really count the number of gates. You have to look at it in terms of movements. There's 6 movements across the track. But because there's like 20 feet of where they are together, somehow that means there's one less movement crossing the track. That's garbage?
Necessarily a lane count. So you have, say for instance, with the right turn, going eastbound, making the right turn, you have dual rights there, but we only count it as one because we're counting just that one movement. So it's 5 total movements overall.
That, by saying 5 total movements, what that implies is that there's a movement at this intersection that doesn't cross the track, that is going somewhere else, that it has its own bridge. You know, there must be a stealth bridge that the left turn traffic must use so that it doesn't cross the track, I guess. You know, they just like they disappear traffic with their unmet demand, they disappear movements at the railroad track.
Would intersect with the railroad crossing there for alternative number 1. Alternative number 2 would have 6 locations.
You know, and what they don't say, you know, I would have brought this up. Yes, I'm prejudicially biased in favor of the PFI, but at least I try to present things in an honest and objective way. I would have said that the bridge, the one benefit of the bridge is that it reduces the traffic crossing the track by 50%, which is something that's, you know, that's good. You know, that reduces the potential, say the possibility of an incident by some amount. You know, but I would also say, but it comes at a trade-off, because it the retaining walls and bridge abutment obscures visibility to a oncoming train. So people don't see the train until they're down here at the crossing. And the reason why that is a potential, well, there's a couple reasons why that creates a potential safety risk, or say reduces the safety some, is that the gate, if the gates fail and somebody's coming down that ramp at speed, this is a through movement, so they don't have to stop. So somebody could theoretically be coming down the ramp at 40 miles an hour or something, and the gates malfunction. A train could be coming and they wouldn't be aware of it until they're at the crossing, until it's too late. The other potential safety risk for people not being able to see an oncoming train, given the fact that there's going to be congestion on the ramp and people are going to be stuck there for multiple signal cycles, people get impatient. And when people get impatient and the railroad track has the gates come down, there's going to be somebody might get the idea that they're going to drive around the gate. They don't want to have to sit and wait. And, you know, they may or may not realize that a train is coming. I mean, if the gate is down, they know the train is coming, but they may not know just where the train is because they didn't see the train. So I guess my point is that yes, it reduces the amount of traffic that crosses the track, but there is a trade-off. It's not a slam dunk. There's a trade-off. The SPUI does not, contrary to what they're showing here, the SPUI does not eliminate any track crossings. All the crossings that are there today will be there with the SPUI.
Locations where you'd have those conflicts. And then alternative number 3 has 6. 6, just like the bottom, is a little bit offset. So still at the same intersection, but it's offset from that intersection. So we'd have to coordinate with CSX to make sure that that whatever design we move forward with is acceptable to them.
That's completely unacceptable. To say that, well, if we're going to build this design, then we coordinate with CSX to see if it's acceptable for them. No. This is a question of feasibility. if CSX says no to this arrangement, that makes the CFI no longer feasible. They have to have that answered during the feasibility study. You don't wait until you've gone through the whole PD&E process and you have your record of decision and you go into final design, because that's the next step. Once they've completed the PD&E, then they're going to go into final design. I've been in this situation where a DOT decides that the railroad isn't a consideration until they get into final design and then say, okay, now we're going to do something that's going to impact the railroad. Let's coordinate with them. And then the railroad says no, and it completely changes the project. That occurred to me in Ohio, with Ohio DOT. They thought that they were going to do something that the railroad decided they wouldn't allow, and that would be, at that time, it was to convert a grade separation with a railroad track into an at-grade crossing. The railroad said no, and that completely changed the project and totally screwed the consultant over who I was working for, screwed me over, screwed the schedule over, and it all boiled down to, at that time, it was Ohio DOT arrogance and laziness and just not wanting to deal with the problem when they needed to. In this situation, since the CFI and the PFI were never going to be given honest, serious consideration, never going to receive rigorous objective treatment as the NEPA requires them to do, because they had already decided on the SPUI, then this question of is this railroad crossing even feasible doesn't need to be resolved. So this is all part of deception and fraud. This is them showing the public alternatives that are not even feasible, but it doesn't matter because they've already decided what they're going to build before the study even starts. So they've got this crossing down here in the south junction of the CFI. I called it out as being not feasible, and I was ignored. Not only is it very unlikely that CSX would approve this, because this is a new at-grade crossing. He says that this is all part of one intersection. This is not the way the railroad's going to see this, because it's hundreds of feet away from the existing intersection, from where their current gates are. They're going to see this as a new crossing. And maybe 100, 200 feet away from this is Leonard Road, which has its own crossing. A terrible arrangement. And this crossing, what I was objecting to is that this crossing that they show, and I'll get into it in more detail, is substandard. And I really don't think that not only would CSX not want a new at-grade crossing, they're going to object to that, but this would be a substandard at-grade crossing. So it's CSX that takes on liability at grade crossings. And this would be FDOT telling them, yeah, we want a new one here. Oh, and oh, by the way, it's substandard, and it is part of a non-traditional intersection. Now, I'm sure CSX would be perfectly fine with that. But as I said, FDOT doesn't care because they weren't going to choose the CFI anyway. So it's just here for theater.
So, given all those different factors, we believe that the preferred alternative that we've selected is the alternative number one, which is single point urban interchange. This was not an easy decision for us at all.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. It was very easy for them. They picked the SPUI as their preferred alternative, not officially, but unofficially. The SPUI was the project back in 2012. When they first began their PD&E, they knew what they wanted to build. It was going to be the SPUI. And the MPO board knew what they wanted FDOT to build. It would be the SPUI with 54/41. That was already pre-decided when they began this whole fiasco, this 7-year-long scam. It was a very easy decision for them.
Engineers, we like to use the numbers as much as possible, but when you really look at the
Yeah, they like to cook the numbers as much as possible in order to get their desired outcome.
context of this intersection, the urban environment, the growing environment, the residents being built on the west end, the businesses in the different corners, we do feel like the single point urban interchange is the best one for this intersection.
Yeah.
Another thing to note,
For them. And they leave that part out. The SPUI is the best alternative for this intersection for FDOT. Not for the public, not for the taxpayers, not for the property owners, not for the environment, not for anyone else. But this is something that they do all the time. Is they drop the conclusion whenever they make claims. They leave out what is important. They let you fill in the blank. When they say, yeah, it's the best alternative, then you think that what they mean is it's the best alternative for the public and taxpayers. But what is left unsaid is it's the best alternative for them, for the bureaucrats, and for the corrupt politicians that sit on the MPO board.
so we're progressing with the PD&E study, and so the substitute alternative is still the single point urban interchange, but one option we want to just look at, just so we covered all our bases, is looking at what if we elevated 41 over 54?
This is stupid. Completely stupid, and I complained about this to FDOT. Of course, I was ignored. But this option, they've already evaluated. They did it in the original PD&E, where they considered taking 41 over 54, which I think was there only for show. It was, again, just theater. It's always been 54 over 41. That's what MPO board wants. A freeway on 41 is not going to happen. And how does Newport Richey prosper by putting the bridge on 41? I mean, they don't. So that's not going to happen. How does Zephyr Hills prosper by putting a bridge over 54? But the thing is, it doesn't work, and I said that there's no point in looking at it. So I touch on this at my 3-minute address, and I think I did in my 10-minute, where I said, and at the time I didn't know that they had already looked at it and dismissed it. I just said it's not going to work, and the reason it doesn't work is because of Dale Mabry. Dale Mabry intersection is right here. Right here. So taking a bridge over 54 would mean braided ramps. And what's called braided ramps, these movements would have to be grade separated to get traffic to Dale Mabry and 41 South, which would be hugely expensive and have huge impacts. They looked at it and they dismissed it. Like, I don't know, more than 7 years. 9 years earlier. It's in their preliminary engineering report as alternatives they considered and rejected. And here they are talking about, well, let's take a look at this. We should look at that. It's just more delay, just more digging holes and filling them back in, just more smoke and mirrors. I mean, he says that it's not gonna affect the schedule. Anything they say with respect to the schedule is a lie. You know, I requested every time they missed their deadline for the feasibility study, which was supposed to take a year, it ended up being 4 years. So they missed the deadline. I asked for an updated schedule. They missed the deadline. I asked for an updated schedule. They missed the deadline. I asked for an updated schedule. I did it 4 times, and then I gave up. There was no point. The schedule is meaningless to them. You know, all the while, they're cutting checks to their consultants to do God knows what. I mean, other than, you know, design the PFI so it looks like crap.
The 54/041. This is not going to slow down the study at all.
Yeah,
we
right.
just want to just look at it internally. So we're going to have that going.
Which they've already done.
So still the same single point urban interchange, but just looking at how that would be if we did 41.
The reason I say that they're even including this right now is because I have claimed to them, I've accused them of trying to turn 54 into a freeway. That's their agenda. And this is a means of deflecting that accusation. Oh, I mean, if we wanted to turn 54 into a freeway, why would we be considering a bridge on 41 over 54? See, they can play that game. That's probably what is motivating this. Otherwise, I can't understand why they would bring this up since they've already done this and dismissed it.
54. But we're still going to take one alternative to the public hearing. So once we go through that preliminary analysis, we can come back to the board to present our findings.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
On the residences, you know, Cambridge Cove, Devonwood Oak, does it matter on their access if you have one going, because I always like the crossing over 54 over to 41, I thought it would simplify the rail. But as I look at the difference, what affects these neighborhoods, and I think there would be a dramatic effect on pricing for those.
So it's this idiot here. Idiot. He's not an idiot. It's this criminal here. I guess technically he's not a criminal because he hasn't gone to jail yet. This fraud here, fraudster, Mariano, after the MPO board had not the MPO board, after the Vision 5456 task force had voted on their 3 alternatives, with the PFI being their preferred choice, like the very next MPO board meeting after their vote, he proposes that they take 41 or 54 underneath 41 and the railroad track. He asks, why can't we just take 54 underneath? So, you know, a completely stupid idea. You know, this is a location that is within a mile of a sinkhole that has consumed like half a dozen homes, an area called Land O'Lakes where the water table is close to the surface and you've got sandy soil everywhere. He thinks somehow it's a bright idea to go underneath the railroad track with 54. But the board says, okay, you know, we ought to look at every possibility, so let's do that. So they task the MPO staff and their consultants to do a cost analysis of taking 54 underneath 41 and the railroad track. You know, no concern over the fact that the signal, whether you take 54 over 41 or 41 over 54, you still have a signal that is going to be a parking lot in the future on one of those 2 roads. In that case, it's going to be on 41. It doesn't change it. If you go over 41 or under 41, the signal on 41 is going to be a parking lot in the future. Don't care about that. So the bottom line is they reject the task force's preference of the PFI. That's rejected. Let's look at going underneath instead. Let's spend 6 months, because it ended up being about 6 months, to evaluate how cost feasible it is to go underneath. This is Florida. Tunnels are not really a thing in Florida. They do it, come back months later and say it's going to be 700, all costs included, like $700 million. Oh, okay, well, I guess we don't want to do that. I could have told him that, 5 minutes after he said this. No, a minute after he said that, I would have said, that's a stupid idea because it's going to cost way more than taking 54 over. It's not even really feasible. What do you do during a hurricane when you have, in essence, a tunnel? What are you doing? So, but all it amounted to is costing 6 months of delay. More delay. 6 more months of delay. For no reason. Just stupid.
Does it matter if it was north-south? Does it make it any better for the residents to access their properties?
It would if it's north-south. So the railroad is kind of limits. Is kind of limited factor on the west side. So the railroad's here, then the right-of-way expansion would go there.
He's talking about, well, if you go north-south with the bridge, then that would make it easier for the people on 54. That makes it easier for them to, access their properties. Okay, well, what about the access impact that you have on 41 if you build the bridge over on 41 over 54? What?
And to the east, just based on the limits of the railroad. So that would then remove kind of the concerns with access to the properties west, because those would remain the same. Of course, then you have more right-of-way impacts just on the east side of the project.
Have you looked at that study?
So because we're only kind of preliminary looking at the north-south, we haven't analyzed the access to all the properties on the east side yet. We still need to kind of develop the concept and look at it. But because you don't have a physical overpass there, all the impacts because of the overpass would pretty much be taken away. So if the overpass goes on 41 instead of 54, all the impacts, all the left turns that were limited, because of the overpass, then you'd be able to make those. Now, if you have a displaced left, then those impacts would largely remain the same. So it's kind of like hit or miss.
No, that's false. This guy's totally talking out his ass. They haven't looked at impacts. They've spent no effort at all looking at access impacts taking 41 over 54. Because when they did consider it, they rejected it due to all of the concrete that they're going to have to build between 54 and Dale Mabry to the south. So they didn't look at access impacts. And there's no reason to.
Depending on what was actually causing the impact. So impacts caused from the overpass would be eliminated by doing north-south. Okay. But because of displaced lefts, those impacts would still remain just because of the nature and the design of the intersection.
Okay. Whatever. If you say so, dude.
So the businesses, Timbits Lumber and folks up Hunt Road, if there's what'd you call it, a free flow 54?
Yes, sir.
With that, and those are commercial businesses, with the volume of traffic and the type of vehicles that are coming in and out of there, the red lights allow those, break in traffic to allow folks to get out, hang a right. I guess if you're going west and get in that turn lane, loop around if they have to come east. I didn't see any opportunity for traffic to have a slowdown period. That way the folks operating on that corner can get in and out safely, unless I missed it.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of your statement. So what corner are you looking at?
All right. this is pretty much done. I'm going to move on.